He walked into his grand mansion unannounced, expecting to surprise his son with a new toy car fresh from Italy. But instead, the millionaire father stood frozen in the doorway, his expensive shoes rooted to the marble floor, his heart pounding. Not from anger, not from betrayal, but from a raw, overwhelming emotion he hadn't felt in years. His 5-year-old son, who hadn't spoken a single word since his mother died, was now laughing belly laughing. And the reason? The maid, on her knees wearing old slippers and a borrowed sweater, was pretending to be a dinosaur, growling with a mop on her head. What shocked him wasn't just the laughter, it was what his son said next. "Mummy?" the boy whispered. That's when the millionaire dropped the toy and collapsed into the nearest chair, tears spilling from the eyes of a man who never cried. He realized then that money had built his walls, but love had found a way through. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe our channel for more real-life inspired emotional stories. Millionaire Thomas Caldwell lived a life most people only dreamed of. Sprawling estates, luxury cars, a private jet, and a home designed like a palace. But since his wife Emily died 2 years ago, none of it brought him joy. The grand chandelier didn't shine the same, the piano in the hall collected dust, and most painfully his 5-year-old son Lucas hadn't spoken a single word since the funeral. Lucas had been a bright child before Emily passed, always curious, always laughing. But her sudden death in a car accident shattered something deep inside him. The boy had withdrawn into silence, communicating only through gestures and drawings. Thomas, crushed by grief, buried himself in work, traveling constantly, avoiding the one place that now felt too empty, home. To manage the household, Thomas hired a rotation of maids and nannies, none lasting long. Lucas didn't respond to any of them. Until one day a new maid named Clara arrived, quiet, humble, and with no extraordinary qualifications except a kind smile and a gentle nature. She was in her late 20s, wore second-hand clothes, and always kept her hair tied in a simple braid. No one paid much attention to her when she came, but Lucas did. Clara never forced Lucas to speak. She didn't talk to him like he was broken. Instead, she made silly faces, read picture books aloud with dramatic voices, and left little hand-drawn notes on his pillow. If you're sad, it's okay. Even clouds cry too. At first, Lucas just watched her. Then slowly, he began following her around the house. He'd sit near her when she cleaned, tug at her apron when she sang to herself, and sometimes draw pictures of her with crayons. Always with a smile on her face. One rainy afternoon, Clara made a tent out of bed sheets in the living room and invited Lucas inside. They ate cookies and pretended they were explorers hiding from jungle animals. Lucas giggled once. Clara didn't react too much, just smiled softly and said, "That laugh, it's magic." The boy stared at her for a long time. Something inside him was changing, but Thomas had no idea. He was away again. Hong Kong, Dubai, London, chasing business deals, unaware that the most important part of his life was waking up slowly at home. It was a Wednesday when Thomas decided to come home early, unannounced. The board meeting in Geneva ended sooner than expected, and for once he felt a strange longing to see his son. He stopped by a luxury store and bought a limited edition Italian toy car Lucas once pointed to in a catalog. It felt good to do something fatherly again. When he arrived at the mansion, there was no staff to greet him. He had dismissed them for the afternoon via a message the day before. Carrying the toy in one hand and his briefcase in the other, he quietly entered through the back door, hoping to surprise Lucas. But what he saw when he stepped into the hallway stopped him cold. There, in the middle of the living room, was Clara, the maid, on all fours, pretending to be a roaring dinosaur, a mop strapped to her head like a mane. Lucas was doubled over in laughter, holding his stomach, tears of joy in his eyes. Clara wasn't just playing, she was performing. She growled, stumbled, and roared again, flopping on the floor like a defeated dragon. Lucas crawled over and wrapped his arms around her neck. And then came the moment that shattered Thomas's world. Lucas whispered, "Mummy." Thomas dropped the toy car. It hit the marble with a sharp clatter. Clara turned around, startled. Lucas looked up, his eyes wide, suddenly afraid. But Thomas didn't shout. He didn't question. He simply walked over, knelt beside his son, and pulled him into a trembling embrace. "He called you mommy?" Thomas said, his voice cracking. Clara's eyes welled up. "I didn't tell him to. He just started saying it a few days ago. I tried to correct him, but..." Thomas looked into her eyes for the first time, not as an employer, but as a father. And for the first time in years he felt something break. The wall, the distance, the coldness. "Thank you," he whispered, "for bringing my son back." And over the next few days Thomas stayed home, really stayed. He joined Clara and Lucas for makeshift picnics in the backyard. He watched as Clara taught Lucas how to bake cookies, even when flour exploded all over the kitchen. Lucas began speaking more, first with whispers, then sentences. His drawings now had smiles, sunshine, and stick figures holding hands. Thomas realized he hadn't just hired a maid. He had unknowingly invited a healer into his home. One evening, Clara found a letter on her pillow. "Dear Clara, I owe you everything. Not as a maid, but as the woman who helped my son feel again, and helped me remember how to be a father. Please don't think of this as a job anymore. I want you to stay, not just in this house, but in our lives. Thomas." A few months later, the mansion didn't feel like a museum anymore. It had warmth, it had laughter, it had love. And one day, as they sat on the front steps watching the sunset, Lucas leaned on Clara's shoulder and said, "Can I call you Mommy Clara forever?" Clara looked at Thomas, who nodded through misty eyes. She hugged Lucas tight. "You already do, sweetheart. The money may build houses, but love builds homes. Sometimes the most broken hearts are healed not by wealth, but by kindness, patience, and simple human connection. Never underestimate the quiet souls. They often carry the loudest miracles."